I loved this show called Oprah's Masterclass. For some reason, I get home, I was like, let me watch that Lorne Michaels one. And he's talking about starting SNL and like how the show was flopping. He said, I decided to give it one more go. And I thought that if I could just keep the faith, this is what I see on TV. The image dissolved, the words, keep the faith, scrolled across the bottom of the screen. It turns into like, the only way I can describe it is like a Country Time lemonade commercial. Sky has all these like purples and reds and oranges, big tree, there's a window on a house to the left. It almost feels like it smells like food, something's baking. Keep the faith runs across the screen. I said, oh, I like that. When this is over, I'm gonna rewind back to this part, pause it, take a picture. A week later, I'm like, oh, I never took a picture of that keep the faith thing. I go back, not there.
Stop.
True story.
Stop.
Not there. And I was like, I know what I saw. And it made me say, I knew God was real, but now I know God is real. I knew everything was going to be okay.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you, because you know she knows a thing or two. So now she's gonna break down. It's a breakdown. She's gonna break it down.
Hey, I just found out something astounding. Approximately 63% of those of you listening to or watching Mayim Bialik's breakdown are not subscribed. We know you're listening and we know you're watching because of all of the awesome comments you leave telling us how Mayim Bialik's breakdown is helping you lead a happier and healthier life. We love that. But the best way to support our show is to subscribe. It's also the only way to get latest updates and to know when new episodes drop. So anywhere that you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you know when a new episode drops. Thank you so much, and on to the episode. Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. This is the place where we break things down so you don't have to.
Orange is the new black, still, after all these years.
We're going to talk to Uzo Aduba, who played Crazy Eyes in Orange is the New Black for so many years.
Also known as Suzanne.
She's going to talk about being raised as the child of Nigerian immigrants and how her love of performing and singing turned into a decision that acting must not be for her the day that she was cast in Orange is the New Black, and her life changed forever. Very, very powerful woman, and talks a lot about her mother's legacy. Her book, The Road is Good, How a Mother's Strength Became a Daughter's Purpose, is also kind of a thread that she weaves into her whole story. Really so excited to get to talk to her.
It's a powerful episode. And at the end, she describes an experience where she is guided. It's hard to describe the type of guidance she receives, but it is not of this world. And the power that she derives from that is so interesting. Just a fascinating experience that she shares.
And if you have any questions in your life about intuition, faith, courage, or confidence, this is the episode for you. It's really a pleasure to welcome Uzo Aduba to the breakdown. Break it down. So my family is from New York. My parents were born during World War II in the South Bronx.
Oh.
And that
Boogie down.
That's it's a different kind of South Bronx.
Okay.
But anyway, my parents then lived in the Village. It wasn't called the Village then. It was just like where all the artists and, interesting people lived. Anyway, so we have a specific way that I was raised to speak, to think, to talk, to play. And I assumed that a person from Toronto, which is the East Coast of Canada, would have a lot in common.
Newfoundland is the
With
East Coast
New
of
York?
Canada.
Well, like
With
just,
the Bronx specifically?
Well, no, with just like, I thought that he would speak the way I speak, but he teases
Just in
the way I
rapid
speak.
succession.
Yeah.
He teases my accents, my awes, my,
okay. So you're giving heavy New York.
Well,
and you're giving a boot.
I don't personally think I have an accent, but I get outed.
You do.
Outed you.
Outed you. My outed you. I've been in the States a while.
Okay.
You're not from New York, though. You're from Greater New England, as we say.
Exactly. That's
so,
right.
Tell us a little bit about sort of like where you grew up. Your parents were immigrants, correct?
Yes. My parents are my family were all from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
They immigrated to the United States. Born also during World War II.
Oh, wow.
I was going to say coincidentally, but it was the world. I grew up in a small town outside of Boston called Medfield, Massachusetts, like 45 minutes outside the city. A very traditional New England town. By that, I mean very white, perhaps also where the Anglos met the Saxons, like just like very that. And so being first gen Nigerian, there were very, 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 very few Black people there.
And probably even fewer Nigerians.
Very few Nigerians, none, exactly zero in the town, other than myself and my family. And so it was just like everything was so new to everybody. And also we're talking like growing up, I'm born in the 80s, you know what I mean? So it's like we're talking a very specific time. Also, we're talking Boston, post-busing, so it's a community that was had not progressed to where one would necessarily imagine, say, today.
So can you spell it out for us a little bit? Like, whereas other places might have been progressive, this was not a place that was?
Not initially, no. Like my older brother, my older sister, I call them frontliners, They were definitely trailblazers and blazed a path for my brother and sister and I to have a much easier experience than the ones either of them had. Specifically, I would even say my older brother, taking the brunt of it, even when my parents bought a house there. They were getting redlined a lot in the beginning. But then they settled in and, it's in this mixture of people who were like, as if we had stepped off a planet different from Earth to settle into the community. But then there were also people who we had like, shout out to Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Swanson, our neighbors, who were so welcoming and couldn't have been for further backgrounds than ours than they were. Mrs. Swanson, who's one of the most beautiful humans in this world, their family, she's from down deep South Louisiana and was one of the most generous, loving humans I've ever met in my life, and remains so to today, and welcoming as well, and her entire family. So yeah, it was just a bit of that.
What did being American feel like to your parents and then also to you?
American to my parents, it was it's weird because it's like they had such a wedded understanding of African culture and Western culture. It was nothing to them to sort of rock a traditional Nigerian outfit on a Monday and then, on a Tuesday be riding in like, a three-piece suit or something. Like that was commonplace in Nigeria. And then it was odd to them to come to America and be met with this idea that their traditional clothes were like looked down upon, frankly, as unintelligent, a socioeconomic group, all of these things sort of labeled them in a way of othering. My mom used to say all the time, she's like, I didn't know there was anything wrong with being Black until I moved to America. She didn't know. She just didn't know because everybody is Black and everybody is doing the highest jobs or, working with their hands. And it's nobody thinks any less of any of those people. So she didn't know. And then it was like, for me, my experience, it's a little bit of a mix of just that experience every kid at a certain, adolescent age has where you just want to fit in. Whatever that means, fitting in. If straight hair is the rage, we don't want the curly. You know what I mean? Like whatever the thing is. Like everybody just wants to fit in. So that's definitely true for me. Like, you're going to school and you're at lunch and everybody's opening up their cool, My Little Pony lunchbox or whatever. And you definitely do not have that. What a waste of money in my parents' minds. It's like, what is this, And they're like jamming on like PB&J or like turkey or bologna and cheese, whatever. And it's like, here I come with my jollof rice and like fufu and like, everybody's like, what is that? And I'm like, it's jollof rice and it's delicious. You know what I mean? Like it's so good, but yes, and it's like, ew, that smell, things like that. Mixed also with being super knowledgeable and tapped in, of course, with everything that's going on culturally at the time. Like I know every lyric to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Saved by the Bell, whatever, and sort of navigating these two sides of yourself, three sides, if you also want to, you add the layer of like culture, race, and I guess nationality,
Mm.
you know?
What was it like for your parents, especially your mom, to have that realization, going from Nigeria where everyone is Black, as you said, and there's not a problem being Black, to like I imagine they're coming to America, they're hoping for opportunity, they're not anticipating some of the struggles that they faced. Is that not like disillusioning for them? The stress that would put on you to have your dreams sort of have this major obstacle or complication. Like, what was that like?
I mean, I also need to like preface the story with my mother actually first stopped in Sweden. So like you couldn't get even more.
We don't feel comfortable in Sweden.
It's like, where are we? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, first stopped and lived in Sweden.
Wow.
With all due respect to Swedish people.
Yeah, we love the Swedes. We love the Swedes.
A wonderful country. Everybody's very happy there.
Yes. Fair and equal, like we love the Swedes. Yes, winter, but she like experienced snow and she actually came to your friendly country of Canada before.
A lot of Nigerian population.
Yeah, before
Toronto.
Coming into the U.S. Because that's where her then husband was living before they immigrated properly into the U.S. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge. My mom would tell these stories of how she didn't even know what racism was because, of course, she hadn't experienced it like practically. She knew the theoretical understanding of it from like what she had read, but in terms of like the really more like almost subverted versions and like less almost more nefarious microaggressions, she was not as versed in that. She was familiar with like marches on Selma and versions of the sit-ins. She knew what that looked like, but she didn't know the day-to-day experience. So she would tell these stories of experiences she would have, where she would show up for job interviews to be a teacher for the teacher position. And they would send her to the custodial interview that was happening around the corner and just based on sight. And like, she didn't know it at the time, that sort of innocence and naivete to it. She'd be like, what would ever make them think that that's what I was here for based on, I came to the place that they told me to come to for my interview. And then they send me around to the back of the school. And, she was so confused. And years later, when she now had a grasp on culture and subtlety in America, she would flash back to it and she'd be like, I was so mad. I wish I could go back to that school and just, go and bash those people with my words, and tell them, I know what you were doing. This is what you were doing.
It also, it really highlights, the absurdity of racism, right? That kind of experience, because it should be so foreign, right? To someone that you would be judged or denigrated because of the color of your skin, right? It's George Foreman, the first time when he flew on an African airline and he was like, the pilot is Black. Is everybody seeing what's happening? He's like, what is that? Like, hey, the pilot, the man driving the plane. And like, that's how absurd it was to him. That's that right. Like we live in, it's, when your worldview is this big.
That's right.
That's exactly what you'll judge it by,
That's right.
That's really interesting.
And the exposure, depending on where you live and how you have been conditioned to understand groups, communities, the world, determines how not only you view those communities, but then how those communities even view themselves. It's not, to your point of the George Foreman of it all, it's like he cannot almost believe it because the world has conditioned him to believe it as unimaginable.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Helix Sleep.
I've had my Helix for about 3 years now, and I have been sleeping very nicely on it. Jonathan and my kids also love their Helix mattresses. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including their award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and the Helix Kids mattress, designed for growing bodies and endorsed by child sleep experts. Take the Helix Sleep Quiz, find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. Helix offers a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Everybody's unique. Everyone sleeps differently. Each of Helix's mattress models are designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. So, for example, I took the Helix Sleep Quiz. I was matched with a midnight mattress because I wanted something that felt firm, and I tend to sleep on my side. Jonathan's more of a twilight, but our mattresses are a huge upgrade from our last ones. And the thing about the differences in these models is that they have memory foam layers that provide optimal pressure relief if you're a side sleeper. Models with a more responsive foam cradle your body for support in stomach and back sleeping positions, and enhanced cooling features keep you from overheating at night. Every Helix mattress combines individually wrapped steel coils in the base with premium foam layers on top. It's the perfect combination of comfort and support. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/breakdown. That's helixsleep.com/breakdown.
This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by AG1.
AG1 is like daily self-care for me and Jonathan. We know we're doing at least one good thing for our bodies every day when we start our day with AG1. For the past about 3 years that we've been using AG1, we know that we're giving our bodies the vitamins, minerals, and more that they need, supporting our whole body health, including gut and immune health. Since drinking AG1, we've noticed major changes in our gut health, less bloating, improved digestion. And aside from the vitamins and minerals in AG1, it also has prebiotics, probiotics, and gut-supporting ingredients for a foundational supplement that keeps us feeling our best. I mean, what good is a supplement if your body can't absorb and actually use it? We trust AG1 because they source ingredients in bioavailable forms, making it easy for your body to use each and every nutrient. And their formula uses non-GMO ingredients and has no added sugar, which is very important to us. Start with AG1 and notice the difference for yourself. It's a great first step to investing in your health, and that's why they've been a proud partner of ours for so long. Try AG1 and get a free bottle of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/breakdown.
That's a $48 value for free if you go to drinkag1.com/breakdown. Check it out. Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by BetterHelp.
You know, recently a friend of mine took up pottery, and I'm very jealous of all the pictures of him at his pottery studio. And I was thinking I'd like to learn how to do pottery, but as an adult, it's sometimes hard to make time to learn new things. I do my best to make it a point to engage parts of my brain that I don't always use and find new ways, to feed those parts of me, especially things that I've been interested in, let's say, since I was a kid but never got to do. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, we sometimes lose that curiosity. Maybe you'd like to learn how to do pottery or how to garden or learn a new language or how to beat Jonathan in pickleball. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder. Your back to school era can come at any age. I found that therapy has been very supportive in helping me understand the way I spend my time, the way I want to spend my time, and what it means to me when I get to learn new things once I make the time for them. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. They'll match you with a licensed therapist, and you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp.
Visit betterhelp.com/break today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/break.
You grew up in a time, as we did as well, before cell phones, right? Our window to the world was like MTV opened up our window to the world.
Sure.
And even that was like a pretty small window. It was like, oh, you get to see that most bands are not attractive, right?
Yeah.
Video killed the radio star.
Yeah.
And then also you're like, oh, there's hip hop culture that I get to understand that wasn't in my neighborhood. So that opened up our world. But also when you think about, it's so different now.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then, what we knew of Africa, what white people knew of Africa, right? What most of our culture in the West knew of Africa was extremely limited. I knew about South Africa. I knew about, the battles there. I knew about that. And I knew a bit about North Africa, right? Because Egypt and Morocco, and these are places where people go to Israel from North Africa, right? But for a lot of us, the rest of it is kind of, I wonder if you can talk a little bit, because it's a huge and threaded component of your book, is really introducing Nigerian culture, both as it was taught to you and also as it kind of infuses your worldview. If you had to in a little thumbnail, tell us about the culture that you were raised in.
The culture I was raised in is one of fierce determination. It's a people who have survived a number of onslaughts, be it colonialism, be it slavery, be it, by Biafran Civil War. My own family experienced that. And we're the side of the oppressed, in that story. It's the most populated group living outside of of Africans living outside of the continent. And we have, I believe, just such a fighting spirit, and we love this country of America, the Nigerians who come here, and the promise that it holds in its constitutions and its creed, that I think is so wonderful. And our families, it's different from today. For example, I have a lot of Nigerian younger cousins who have the foothold well established for themselves. But, when I was coming up as a kid, my parents were the first in both of their families to immigrate to the United States. And they were befriending a lot of people who were firsts. And it was a time where people built community because there was none, especially, in Boston. A lot of people settled in Boston because of schools. It's such like a hotbed for like higher education. And it's like, I think of it all the time. It's like almost like the Mayflower. You know what I mean? It's like people later like, there are hotter places in America. We didn't even have to stop here. So we didn't have to deal with this snow. We could have been in Houston. We could have been in California. Like they just didn't know, and a very, very loving community with high expectations for those of us who are born here to seek and reap every opportunity that this country can provide.
Really beautifully said. And I wonder if you can help us understand how, how that met with your desire to be creative and to be an artist. A lot of my grandparents are immigrants. And, the notion of like being an artist was like, I'm sorry, what? They said to my mother, like, no, that's not what it can be your, it's not your vocation.
Hobby.
Right. It's a hobby. Right. And my mother always wanted to go to fashion school and she was really interested. And it was like, no, we don't do that, And I'm curious, what was it like? How did sort of creativity come to you? You come from a big family, so obviously not all of you are actors.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what was it about you that felt that need for, a creative expression that way?
I always had, when I think back on like being like in the back, downstairs singing and doing all these like random things, like obviously I must have been like displaying a passion for it. It wasn't anything my parents ever pushed, but they did, again, like, because this country had so many opportunities, I think they wanted to employ them, as often as possible. And like my mom also, she used to say, she's like, if I grew in this country, I probably would have been an artist because she was a beautiful visual artist. She's like, but that just doesn't exist, So, so I was put in like, drama classes at my school and all of these things. And it was really my creative writing teacher, who also was my drama club director, who pulled me after class one day. She was like, I was just curious what you were thinking about doing, next year.
Is that your white lady voice?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I was like, are you curious what you're doing? So I lean into the mic for some reason as if I'm Diane Sawyer. I don't know like what I'm exactly trying to channel, but here we are. She's like, for school next year where you were applying. And I was like, oh, I was thinking about this, that, whatever. I want to do IR and I love government and poli-sci. And I think I want to be a lawyer and move to DC and be a lobbyist. Like that's what I thought. Didn't know what a lobbyist actually that was, but that sounded right. And she was like, okay. She's like, have you given any thought to going into the arts? And here's where being the child of immigrants comes into play. Because honestly, even though my parents had put us in these programs and things, their knowledge and exposure like had a cap. They just like legit, I had never even heard of art school, conservatory, like such a thing in my life. And it's not because my parents were like hiding the pamphlets away or something. It was just like, they didn't know, they had no idea. And so,
I mean, they were busy with a lot of other things in their defense, trying to like establish a family and,
raise five kids. They're like, we're just trying to make it out here, kids. We just need to go to college and preferably
Stop dancing.
Yes, exactly. A profession that makes money. And I was just like standing there, and I know I had to have looked like with like just like no clue what she was talking about. She's like, I feel like you could do something in this, and she was just like, pause for a second, and she like cocked her head just like this to the side, and she was like, you can go to school for this, right? And I had truly no idea. But when she said it, a light bulb went off in my head, like, that's what I'm supposed to do for my life. And like, I remember going to graduation, having my graduation party from high school, and I'm like telling all my aunts and uncles what I'm doing. And that did not compute for them, because now I'm like no longer on the lobbyist train. I'm on the going to art school, Boston University College of Fine Arts. And I remember my uncle, he asked me, he's like, so what will you be studying there at BU? I was like, singing. And he was like, singing? Just ordinary singing. I was like, yep. And then my aunt, she said to me, so we moved to America so you could be poor.
Right.
Because they totally could not even conceive of what I was even talking about. Now they all say that they always believe.
Of course. That's what they say after. That's what they say after.
I knew it.
But it's a reasonable expectation.
If I were your parents, I'd be like, the hell you are. I'm sorry.
I mean, if you look back into your class, and maybe your class is abnormal, but if you look back to the people who were in Singing 101, I'm making that class up.
Yeah.
How many of them are actually making a living doing that for a profession?
Sure. The odds are not, on our side. Like, I can legit remember my freshman year. It was like right after matriculation, and we were in whatever school meeting, and I can remember the dean talking and said, less than 1% of you are going to make a living doing this. I also remember in that moment saying in my head, as I'm sure many of my classmates said to themselves, I was like, I'm going to be one of them.
You felt like that?
I said, I don't know if I knew to think differently.
So is that just I'm literally an actor acting like I have no idea what you're talking about. No, but I think that's, you'll meet people in their 50s who are waiting for their first break, and they still have that kernel of, right? Like belief, hope, faith, artistic, whatever. I did not have that. Yeah. But I think that's really interesting to me, because it takes that many people to believe, right? To try and create.
Yes. Art is belief. Yeah. I think there is faith steeped in art making. I think it's intrinsic to the form, I think, right? Because something that no matter what the medium, it does not exist until you, from your mind, draw it out into something, whether that's character, whether that's painting, whether that's music.
I didn't think we were going to faith this quickly. I was like in my back pocket of like what a dog-eared page. Okay, so what you just described is how like the biblical understanding of the creation of the universe is that there was nothing and then there was something because of a creative, loving force that decided, whatever that means, that we're going to create something out of nothing.
Yes.
So I'm curious, was there any aspect of kind of feeling divinely guided? Because, what we do as humans is to emulate something bigger than ourselves, right? And that is kind of what artists are doing.
Yes.
We're taking something that didn't exist until we feel moved, to create it. Did it feel divine? Were you driven by a faith that way?
I don't know if it felt necessarily divine. I don't feel like I had like a Moses moment, but like I did, but I did feel latched to my faith that I don't know. I gave up. I quit exactly one time. But before that time, whether it was my belief, and then even when my faith was wobbly, my mother's faith was so strong and strong enough to pour into me to give me the covering that I needed to keep going. So I did not feel like I had a message per se, or I was like specific, extra special or anything like this. but I did have a knowing that I needed to just believe. I had to just believe. Coupled with, let me also say, because by the time I graduated, I remember me and my best friend at the time talking about that summer before moving to New York. We were like, I said to myself, I am going to have to work harder than I have ever worked in my life. So, right, if we're going to go there, let's go there. Faith without works is dead, right? That's what it says. And I believed that I have to really, 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 really work at this. But I had faith that something, and my mom would say this, end with this. My mom, when she dropped me off when I moved to New York, she turned off the car, getting ready to get on the bus. And she was like, Uzo, you must work hard. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I know. And she's like, no, no, no. Work hard. And she always used to say this expression to us our whole lives coming up as kids. She'd say, I've never heard of nothing coming from hard work. She said, I don't know what will come, but I do know something will come if you work hard. And I had that burned into my brain. She had said it countless times before, but for some reason, that day, it stuck. And I was like, something will come. I don't know what will come, but something will.
So you studied voice.
Yeah.
And can you explain to those of us who didn't study voice?
Yeah.
Did you study classical? You sing like a proper opera lady?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so you learn music theory and all these things and performance. And then not every singer is an actor.
Yeah.
Not every actor is a singer.
Correct.
You happen to be both of these things.
Yeah.
So when you moved to Manhattan, was the idea to be a singer, an actor, all the things? Did you also dance?
I move.
Okay.
I move. I'm not giving you 42nd Street at all. I wish I could. I wanted to sing and I wanted to act. Yeah. But I knew I was not going to pursue opera. I did know that. But I did want.
What's it like to study opera? Do you just discover that you can do that? Is it something you knew? Because a lot of us sing in the shower.
Yeah.
A lot of us, grew up when you did and there was amazing music to sing along to.
Yeah.
But opera is a very special thing that not everybody can also learn to do. There's an innateness to your talent.
Yeah. I found out when I had started working, someone in our town told me to get a voice teacher.
Yeah.
My parents got me one, and the voice teacher was a classically trained voice teacher, and I was just singing, and I guess my voice, especially towards the top, as low as my voice is, I'm actually a soprano.
Husky.
Yeah, exactly. But as I go up, it just flips into that space.
Hold, please. It flips into that space.
That very much full sounding head voice naturally. It just naturally would go that way.
Your vocal cords were made to do that.
Or
they can do that.
It just went into that place. So
and it vibrates a little bit.
Yeah, it had that kind of vibe.
Right.
So that was just through her guidance, my voice teacher, Cheryl Weiss, in high school, guided me towards that path.
Did you have to sing in other languages?
I sang in other languages.
What other, Italian?
Italian.
German?
Yeah.
Do you have to know those languages?
Somewhat. Yes, I studied Italian in college.
Okay.
We also take a phonetics class, and we learn the complete phonetic alphabet. So that way we can. But as people go deeper and deeper down the road for opera, it is highly recommended that you immerse yourself in another language. I did speak French going into college, and
not a lot of French opera.
I know, a little bit.
I mean,
small.
Do I tell my Hansel and Gretel story now?
Sure.
Tell me, yes.
So I love Hansel and Gretel, and I love ballet.
Oh, okay.
These, I was a classically trained ballet dancer in my youth, and I really loved ballet. And so I was taken to see Hansel and Gretel, and it was a ballet, and it was really lovely. But it was also an opera, and I did not enjoy that part. Because they were singing the whole time in a different language. And the letters, it was illuminated.
Yeah.
I was like, this is downtown. I got all dressed up. I mean, it was lovely, but it's just not my jam.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, there's something about it. Like I understand it. I value it. And I'm a liturgical Jewish singer. And so like, there's like cantorial styles that can be very operatic.
Yes, yeah.
But sorry, that's my Hansel and Gretel story. It's not very exciting at all, but that's my opera story.
And your parents took you to that?
No, it was my boyfriend at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was, again, like I didn't need the singing and I couldn't follow along. And
You're
was
like, just the ballet, please.
Just dance. I don't mean to sound so uncultured, but I can't help it. Not all of us came from outside of Boston.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Ground News.
There are some major problems with today's media landscape. One problem is information overload, especially the spread of false or misleading information, especially on social media. And another problem is this kind of polarization that's happening, echo chambers that are driven by algorithms, which really just reinforce pre-existing beliefs. It's no wonder so many of us have lost faith in traditional journalism. We'd like to introduce you to Ground News, the website and app that helps you make sense of the news. They gather related articles from around the world in one place. And what you get to do is compare coverage, get context about the source of your information. Like, for example, if the news outlet has a political leaning, you can see how reliable their reporting is, who owns them, which details are emphasized, exaggerated, or left out entirely. They also have a blind spot feed that shows you news stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. It allows you to step into someone else's media reality, which can lead to empathy and understanding and less confusion. We love how Ground News allows us to think critically about the news we consume, access different viewpoints, and see discrepancies in how certain topics are covered or not covered at all. This is something Jonathan and I have been talking about for years, and we're so glad that Ground News exists because we really do deserve to have a more well-rounded understanding of the world and the way media reports on the world. Go to groundnews.com/break to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan. That'll unlock access to all of their features. We think it's a really cool and essential tool in today's world. They're doing important work. Check them out. That's groundnews.com/break.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Ritual.
I got a lot of advice when I got pregnant for the first time, but I wish someone had told me to really try and take a moment every day to enjoy what's happening and not just be stressed about what's about to happen. So many women experience anxiety around conceiving and pregnancy, but you can worry less with Ritual. Get the key nutrients needed to support pregnancy. Feel confident with Ritual's Essential for Women prenatal multivitamin, designed to deliver 12 key nutrients for pregnancy in just 2 daily capsules. I love how easy and painless it's been to incorporate Ritual products into my daily routine. I especially love that they're vegan friendly. Ritual's prenatal multivitamin is designed for mom to baby support with vegan, bioavailable, science-backed key nutrients. Methylated folate, nature-identical choline support baby's neural tube development. Omega-3 DHA for brain and early vision development, support from mom to baby. Also has vitamin D to support fetal bone health and is designed with morning sickness in mind, with a delayed release design to help make it gentle on an empty stomach. Each bottle includes a citrus essence tab so you can enjoy taking your multis. Ritual is rigorously tested by third party for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. It's so important to know what you're putting in your body, especially when you're pregnant. With Ritual's dedication to traceable science and sourcing, you always will. See for yourself with 25% off your first month for a limited time at
ritual.com/breakdown. Before we get into how you discovered that you were also an actor, maybe you knew that going into school, can you tell us about the time that you quit?
Sure. So I quit.
Well, you said you quit acting once.
Exactly once. And that was that time that I quit. I was, so I had been doing theater in New York, and I started working with a manager who was from Hollywood. And she told me, much like my creative writing teacher, that I should pursue film and television. And I think because, honestly, you guys, because she was from Hollywood, I believed her. And way back here in the back of my brain, it was a secret pipe dream of mine that I didn't even give way to because I just had never seen anybody I felt like myself in that space. So it just... It's horrible to say that I somehow felt like Broadway felt safer because we've all seen a chorus line. But like, you know.
A lot of legs. A lot of skinny legs.
You know, but I was just like, that felt like I felt like I was, a welcoming pad was there. So I was like, okay, she's like, we're not auditioning for any film. I'm not auditioning for any plays and we're not taking any offers. I was like, lady, not getting offers, but thank you for believing in me in that way, you know? So I'm auditioning for all these films and TV shows this summer.
That's a leap of faith also, to be like, I'm gonna
100%.
like put my bag here and see what happens.
100%. And this is my bread and butter at this point.
And I was going to say, you're working hard,
correct,
right? And
correct.
all these things are part of that ethic.
Correct. I'm making a humble living, but it's my living, right? Like I'm making it and I'm happy with it. But like I'm watching my bank account like dwindle, you know? So I go on this audition for an episode of Blue Bloods. Sorry. No, first I went for an audition for Orange is the New Black. Do the audition. Don't hear anything. It's in a series of...
I think you described it like a firing squad. And that is what it's like. When you go for an audition, it's like 6 people behind a table. And they're like, go, do it, make us laugh.
Yes, do the thing. And I was like, okay, go for this audition for Blue Bloods. I get sent the wrong directions. I go to this other studio. Nobody's there. They send me the right directions. Greenpoint, Brooklyn, for those who don't know where Greenpoint is. I go to the right studio. I'm 20 minutes late. We all know as actors, not supposed to be late.
There wasn't cell phones then either.
No, there are cell phones.
Well, I'm trying to think, but we didn't have GPS. It wasn't like,
no,
right.
I'm on the fucking whatever, MapQuest or whatever. Google Maps. Can I swear? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to swear. Sorry.
You can.
You know, so it's like, I'm just like so upset. Like just starting to feel the tears bubbling. Get in the room, do my bit. I finished. I remember feeling like for the first time, it was a great audition. And I was like, that was a great audition. You're not going to get this job, though, because you're 20 minutes late. And the universe has been telling you like 100 times now, no. And you keep trying to push something that is not for you.
That's a lot going on in your head.
Oh my gosh. Are you telling me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying this as I'm walking out. I hit the street leaving this office, tears immediately. And the tears aren't the tears where it's like screaming, you know, when those are bad too. Like it's the kind that are just like
Despair.
Falling and I can't stop it.
Yeah.
And I get on the train, 3 transfer, I'll never forget it, on the subway. Transferring 3 times, still, by the time I get to my house, tears. I said this surrender prayer on the train, and I was like, if you can find a way for me to go to law school, remember this old law school lawyer bit. I was like, this is what you were supposed to do with your life, and you've been making a mistake with your life this whole time. It's like, if you, God, can find a way for me to go to law school, I will go. And I wasn't like at peace, I would say, but I was definitely like resolved, like had resolved that was what I thought life was meant to for me. It wasn't, and I was going to go do this other thing. So I like order some sushi, I order some wine. I call my sister, I tell her to come over. I'm going to tell her first. On Monday, this is a Friday. I'm like, on Monday, I'm going to call my agent and this Hollywood manager and tell them I'm out.
Crazy bitch, that Hollywood manager.
Exactly. Who doesn't know what she's talking about. My phone is on my coffee table. It's 5:43 p.m. True story. My phone rings and I get the call. And my agent's like, hi, you know, I have Joan on the phone. And I was like, oh, okay, that's the Hollywood manager. I was like, okay. And she says to me, she goes, and I think they're calling because I'm 20 minutes late. So I was like, okay, here we go. This is good, just as good as, you know, to tell it today. She says to me, she goes, you remember that audition you went on for Orange is the New Black? I said, yeah. She said, you remember the part you auditioned for? I said, yeah, I remember. It was the track star, the part of the track star. She says, yeah. You didn't get it. And I was like, I'm getting out right at the right time when agents are now calling talent to tell them that the jobs they're not getting, you know, like I'm getting out right at the right moment. And she's like, but they'd like to offer you another part. Yeah. And tears again, full tears. And it was the one.
But I have to go to law school.
Yeah, exactly. I'm supposed to go and be a lobbyist. Yeah, it's like, I'm moving to DC right now. You know, like, it's just like wild. And it was the one and only time I had ever truly quit. I've questioned, wondered, felt lost, but I had never quit in my heart. but I did quit in my heart that day.
For that afternoon.
For that afternoon, exactly right. For those 30 minutes,
you quit
I was out.
very quickly.
I was out. Yeah, true story.
So, walk us through a little bit of what happened next. This was a guest spot, correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got the job, and I also got that Blue Bloods job. Also, sidebar, I did get that job. First two things I'd ever booked on TV. I'd never been on camera before, in my life. And so they told me it was 2 episodes, maybe 3, to play Suzanne Crazy Eyes Warren. I was like, okay. And it was just, it's so wild. Like now I'm like thinking about it, and as I was writing this book, like thinking about it again, like just such a wild time because we did the 2 episodes. I can remember the producer walking me back to my dressing room, and she said, and we'll see you, can't wait to see you again. And I was like, wow, I'm going to get to do that 3rd episode. And that was the extent of my thought. Like, I'm going to get to do that 3rd episode. It's amazing. Like, this is so incredible. I had no idea that conversations had, subtly begun with my agent at the time, my manager at the time, that they would like me to stay on for the rest of the season. I had no idea whatsoever. And then that's what ended up happening. And it was just like this. And even, honestly, even with that, when we finished the season, I just was like, that was awesome. I thought that was the end. Like, I had no expectations for anything.
You played a very distinctive character on Orange is the New Black, and many people's kind of, beloved, most talked about, kind of character. I'm curious in terms of like character development, is that how you intended to do it going in? Like, was that what your audition was like? Did you have other ways you did it? Were you directed a certain way that became this character that we know of? How did that evolve?
It was a mix, I guess I would say, of both. The only thing that was a holdover from my audition, because I auditioned for a different part, was that I had worn my hair in the Bantu knots. And so when I came in, I remember reading it, and I thought for me, it felt very clear that I was reading a love story. That's what I was looking at. I was like, this is a love story. What would somebody do for love? And I would do anything for love. And I know I've had my heart broken, and I know what love has felt like and looked like to me.
You just quoted Meatloaf also.
Yeah.
Props to that.
Thank you. Anything for love.
I know you studied song, theater, singing, voice.
I'm bringing my depth of catalog into this. Yeah. So I was just like, that's how I kind of saw her. And then Marco Ramirez, who wrote that first episode, but Sean Heder, who wrote episode 3, which was the larger whatever episode for Crazy Eyes. She, along with our director for that episode, Jodie Foster, were very open, along with the show creator Genji, to hearing ideas and seeing ideas. And we had rehearsal. And I remember I had heard this poem that I do out of the track. I had heard it, I had I have a wild imagination anyway, but I was just like, oh, wouldn't it? She's like this beat poet, like fancies herself as somebody who's like down at the Nuyorican Cafe and, the Lower East Side, and thinks like she's, the next Nikki Giovanni or something, like that she's not just reading it. And I was so grateful. I remember that day being out in the field, Sean could see that I had an idea, and she said, what do you think? And that gave me such a freedom, because I said, okay, well, this is how I heard it, but if you don't want to do it that way, we can do it, however you want, but this is how I heard it. And I was all standing there, and I did it. And Jodie was like, do it exactly that way. And that was such a permission and a license, not only for the further development of the character, but a freedom to even explore the full range of her existence, that Perhaps if it had been interrupted or stunted at any point earlier because I had no experience in this medium. I was used to 4 weeks of rehearsal, all of this, right? Where you make it and develop it. I'm not sure it would have been that, but thankfully I was surrounded by this wonderful body of women who were open to ideas and interpretation.
What gave you the confidence to sort of hold space there? Because I think, I think this is something a lot of people could relate to. Like sometimes we're put into situations, and especially when we're new or we're novice, or it's like a new-ish thing, you don't really know. I don't want to say what right you have, but I think especially as women, and I would imagine, with your background and your experiences, there'd be a lot of places where you might say like, no, I shouldn't speak up. I
Yeah.
should just like keep my head down. Like what was it? Was it something particular about you? Like, is that, your mother's spirit in you? Like what gave you that confidence?
I think it's a combination. I think it's a piece of my spirit. I love rehearsal. That's my favorite part of the process, frankly. I love, of course, the performance. That's like satisfying. We are actors, but it's like the rehearsal has always been the most exciting part. Like getting in the dirt and putting the water in the mud and watching the clay morph into something.
Or just trying to step around the mud so nobody gets dirty is what like many of us do.
No, I like to roll around in it. I like to roll around in it, and I might get dirty and there might be mistakes, but from that is going to be born something that's going to come out of that can be useful.
Not nothing.
Not nothing. Exactly, if we're doing the work. Coupled with the support. I cannot underscore enough how significant Genji Cohen was in that process for the writer's room and who she welcomed into that space. I.e. Lauren Morelli, who was a fresh new writer at that time, and giving her actual agency. Then coupled with that same excitement and invitation to create that she gave to the cast, to really create something, and was always interested in hearing the word on the page as written, and then was always open to the idea. If there is a better idea, I am welcome to that. I welcome the better idea. That takes a confidence.
For sure. I don't know those people. It sounds wonderful, though.
It also takes a huge amount of surrender that you're going to get somewhere that's fundamentally better than where you started, to sort of like allow yourself to go into that and take all those ideas and not think it's going to get watered down and bad, that you can direct it or guide it to a place that is ultimately improves and finds those unexpected moments.
Correct. And she really, that show was hitched on so many of us. Like, it's important to say, so many of us who had never done film and television before, a lot of people who coming out of conservatory, a lot of people coming out of the theater scene, downtown and uptown alike, but didn't have this bench. We weren't a bench of, people who had been in the space. That takes a confidence on her part, knowing I have a really great story here, and these actors can tell it. That we don't always see. We see it sometimes, and we get excited by it when we see it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and Jonathan's heard, these stories, I was raised from the time of like a teenager in a very classic like sitcom world that was, largely governed by male, white male, older, presence.
Yeah.
And there was a very specific way you did things. There's a real formula that you followed. And then obviously I worked for, Chuck Lorre, who's, a master of the format of what we did, but a very different, kind of aspect of Hollywood. And it's funny because it's
a much tighter format than...
sitcom is a tighter format. I mean, it has more boundaries, obviously, and it has more structure to it. But I think also what's interesting is, streaming networks didn't used to exist, right?
Correct.
And so like, there's this like burgeoning possibility. And I think spaces that a lot of women stepped into as creators, and Genji being one of them, like, writers, that kind of being like, what if we break the format of the way we're told the industry has to work, And I think that's kind of your show was really early on in the days of like, what is this? Where is it? Where do you watch it? How is it? It's a new format. And I think it's really kind of nice to hear that the structure also was a new format, you know, from the way things had been done.
100%. I mean, when we had that show, I can't tell you the number of people when we shot the first season, I told that we were like, I was like, oh, it's a web series. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I was like,
A little bigger budget.
I legit didn't know because there was no such thing. Like,
Right.
what it was like, I was like, I think it's going to be able to, like, on YouTube, maybe. I don't know, like, where you can get it. Like, I had no idea. And it wasn't until House of Cards came on that I was like, oh, it's going to
It's like that.
It's going to be like that, you know, because I didn't have any idea, you know. But yes, it was that sort of like the newness, the new frontier of it all. And the confidence, I think also, I have to just like say this. I can remember one time, season 1, we had finished a take of a scene and we were walking back to our dressing rooms and we were going past the village where everybody watches, you know.
Village.
Video Village. And every seat there was occupied, save one, by a woman. And I just remember, even in the theater, I had never seen such a thing.
It's different.
Yes. And it fills your bones differently.
Yeah.
When you see those seats held in that way. And it makes you think differently about the trajectory of your own career and what is even possible for you.
You think about girls' school. We talk a lot about, like, I was just scared to raise my hand in school because I don't know. Boys can be mean. Girls can be mean too.
Absolutely.
Sometimes boys are meaner than girls when you're 8, 10, 12. And I think about what happens when we put girls in supportive academic environments, right?
Yep.
Like a lot of that fear goes away.
Correct.
And of course, there's exceptions to this. There's people are gonna be like, I had a mean teacher once. Yes, women can be mean, women can be foolish, women can be not great creators and producers and all these things. But the notion is you're trying to foster a climate that has a different operating system.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
100%. 100,000%.
That's why I didn't win an Emmy.
No. Oh my God.
A little bit.
No, that is definitely not what. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
My goal is to have on every person I've ever lost.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lot of years. A lot of years. Anyway.
OMG. OMG.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I want to get to what the success of the show, how that changed your life and the cultural impact that had. Like, it was a massive show. It exploded. It sounds like when you were filming the first 3 episodes, you were not aware of what was about to unfold. Before we get there, I'm curious to talk a little bit about the character and, you know, the mixture of the challenges she had mentally, emotionally, while also she was a character. And, you know, I want to disclose here, I watched every episode of Orange is the New Black. I kind of...
He auditioned for your part.
Yeah, exactly. So uncomfortable. This is where we're all here.
I think I got to it a little bit later, but like, and you know, I was just totally enthralled by it. Your character also has one of the clearest, almost sets of moral guidelines and in how she acted and how loyal she was and what she would do for friends and protection, and yet also her own struggles. So I wonder if you can talk about the balance there or the counterbalance between those two.
Yeah, you know, my hope in playing that role was as broad as aspects of her existence might have appeared. I do think she was still very grounded and rooted in truth. And I felt very sensitive to that, given the fact that she was battling a mental illness. It also, you know, going back to this conversation of freedom, because it was never disclosed specifically what it was she was battling, that did provide a freedom to not sort of research one thing and stick to the boundaries of
this
that
is how
one.
people behave when they have,
Correct.
Did you get any information about what was going on with her? Like
Not when we started.
Because in the later seasons, they introduce her parents, which is a very complicated relationship, which brings an enormous amount of insight and humanity into how she is.
Correct. I mean, they knew where I had grown up, and the complexity of that, where she's adopted by this white family, she's adopted into this white family in a white suburb. What is her deal? Her story. And I think what freed me was, rather than hanging my hat on her diagnosis, I could hang it on doing my very best to try to, as clearly as I could, translate what it was that she was trying to express. And so it became more about her emotional journey and experience of the world, and less about the trials of being a mentally divergent individual, a neurodivergent person. And that felt, and frankly feels more interesting to play, so that was really like the journey there, because what I knew for sure, she knew what she was saying. That's what I knew for sure. Even no matter how many roads she took to get there, or how she maybe expressed herself, whether it was aggressively or obsessively, I knew her intention was incredibly clear. It just got fuzzy when it came to the action of it for others too.
I mean, is it crazy to say that she's just an exaggerated extrapolation of what most people experience? Like, she's guided by clear desire to have love, connection, to feel a sense of connection, and yet her frustration or coping mechanisms get really tangled and are just larger or more pronounced than others. But
1,000%, I think that's true for the show itself. I think the show taught us, the tagline for the show is, every sentence has a story. And I think it's so easy for us to look at the headline of, convicted felon and reduce somebody to that, and not do the good work or the heavy lift of extrapolating that into, really like, what is the word I'm looking for? Dissecting. Thank you. Dissecting that into more nuanced and specifics that are required there. Sometimes socioeconomics plays.
Well, I was going to say, and not to get political, but I can't help it. It's much easier to ignore people when you don't care about them. So it's when you're imprisoning a large portion of a population because of political motivation. Sorry, like Ava DuVernay here.
No, fair.
Once you dehumanize people by experience, by taking away their story, right? By taking away their identity, it's much easier to keep oppressing and imprisoning.
That's correct.
Right? Once you know, and I think that's what Orange is the New Black meant to so many people. It's really ahead of its time and so needed to say, there's a story here. And what happens when you open up your heart, you have to open up your mind, and then you have to also, but this is, I think, part of the conversation. You then have to challenge, what is the structure, that's being put in place for us not to be able to open up, our minds and hearts to the people that we're,
1,000%. 1,000%. And I think by the end of the series, the show got incredibly, I think, dense, and certainly started to take its stories in a more intellectual direction that questioned, we, the viewer, you're enjoying this, but what are you even getting out of this? What have you really understood of the conversation that's meant to be had with this art? Which is, how did any of these people get here?
Well, that's exactly it. As the show progressed, each one had a very complicated set of circumstances that was flashed back to, where you're like, oh, of course they made these decisions. Like, there was no other option for them.
Correct.
Or they felt there was no other option for them.
Felt there was no other option to them. And I thought, like, I'm going to give like another shout to Genji. What I thought was always like the brilliance of that show was, bringing in this fish out of water story of someone who we could all explain as viewers the mistake. It was an obvious quote unquote. She made a mistake, even though she willingly went into the practice of muling drugs. You know, like. But because of her background, her relatability to us, we could understand it. And then I thought it was so genius, these people who we actually imagined to be so distant from us, perhaps actually their circumstance is a true mistake. They actually weren't afforded the same opportunities, and we can better understand how unfortunately you got here versus somebody who had every opportunity and perhaps even chose to end up here. I thought that was the genius work happening there, that our biases, our ideas of what a person, an imprisoned person, looks like and is deserving to be somewhere really looks like.
And you can take away imprisoned and say anyone struggling with whatever
That's
it
correct.
is,
That's correct.
I can have a better understanding of what their circumstances are or empathy but for this, I might be in that circumstance.
That's correct.
How did the show blowing up, like, when did that happen for you? Like, all of a sudden, when did you realize, like,
You were made a regular second season, is that right?
I was made a regular second season. We were shooting it as season 1 came out. And, Mayim, you can speak to the experience, yours, in your very long and robust career that you've been in this business, like what that feels like. My experience was I was coming into the streaming space where people watch the whole show in a weekend.
Right.
And you went from like Friday.
You didn't follow the ratings every week.
No, like
right.
I'm at Trader Joe's on Friday, and then like Monday on the subway, I'm like, what is happening? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, what just happened? And that happened. I was on a mountain in Sundance for the theater institute that they do in the summer. And we had no service down at base camp when we're rehearsing and doing work. Only had service up in the cabins where we were staying. And so whatever, I would go, I just remember I would go up to the cabin. And as I would be walking up the mountain, because everybody just walked because it was so gorgeous, you're getting closer and closer to Wi-Fi. And like all of a sudden my phone would be like, and it's like, you have 500 new followers. And I was like, it must have been from that sassy, well-crafted tweet from last night that I had. And it's like, no, because I just watched Orange is the New Black. Like, it took a minute to like make that connection, but it was wild. It was totally wild. And that just kept happening with each season, because it's not, this week we watched these, 4 episodes. It's like you saw the whole thing. People are totally invested now, and they feel like they know that character so well because they were with you for 12 hours.
I mean, to kind of take it back to, your book and this kind of thread of your mother's belief in you. And, I'm thinking back to the first teacher, like the drama teacher, and then like the, just like how all these people kind of giving you pointers and a road.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, for lack of a better metaphor.
Yeah.
A road to kind of follow. What did it feel like to have that kind of success? Did it feel like I knew it? Did it feel like I was wrong and someone else was right? Did it feel like this is luck? This is destiny? Like, what was the reaction from your mom? Like, what, and your whole family?
Honestly, there was a huge part of me that felt like I had fulfilled the dreams of all of my parents, like my parents, of my mom specifically, that I had matched the sacrifice, because my parents, we come from a very, very humble beginning. And they gave up a lot. My mom gave up a lot for me and my siblings, to go to college, to go to do all of this, like just to have a
Things
roof
that
over
weren't
our
options
head.
for her.
Yeah, a roof over our head, food on the table. And she would say all the time, she's like, my American dream is for you people to be able to live your dream. And she worried about me a lot because I wasn't, I was hustling in New York, like barely making my rent, barely having food in my fridge, like eating pre-meal for everybody who's waited tables, like that's how I was getting by and worried, like, is this going to work out? And it just was such a satisfying thing to know that she had peace of mind, like maybe this is going to work out, and that was gradual because like, when the first season came, she's like, Uzo, save that money. Like, you don't know whether, and then like, I think time moved a little bit where it's like, oh, maybe she is going to be able to make her rent next month. Or maybe she's going to be able to, buy herself some dinner tonight. And I'm not going to have to, she prayed for me every day, every single day. Every single day. I have her journals. They talk about it in the book. My mom and I kept journals since we're kids, both of us. I have boxes of them of mine, and after my mom, she passed away. Before she passed away, she told me to take the journals, and read them all. And she had boxes and boxes. And I've only been able to start one because it's like such a treasure and most valuable thing I own, frankly, in my opinion. And like repeatedly, you guys, it's like her praying for me.
Your siblings also, or just
me? Let's be clear.
The
artist. just me. What is there any other sibling?
She had pretty powerful prayers.
Yeah. But it's like,
I'm sure they're lovely, but
She's like, I'm praying for Uzo. She's like, I really hope life stabilizes for her, like just praying for, every time we talk on the phone, I talk to my mom every day. She'd be like, and I prayed for you last night and I know God is going to, find a way. So, a lot of it I owe to her silent and loud prayers.
How long after you graduated before you quit and then got those 2 jobs?
7 years? No, 8 years. 8 years.
That's an intense time period I mean, there's a lot of stories of people hustling like that.
Yeah.
But the level of prayer and in just unknown and uncertainty that comes with that is no small pressure.
Yeah.
I wonder, you've talked about sort of when you sort of became a high profile person, that was a time when you tried therapy, meaning when you sort of engaged in looking at that part of you, right? That we often only look at in therapists' offices. What were some of the things that, because, I think there's a real universality into what you're talking about. Not everybody gets on a TV show and like is famous over the weekend. But, people have experiences where things happen that they're not expecting, where they're learning about aspects of themselves or other people's perceptions of them that can feel really, incongruous.
Yeah.
What were you delving into and what was helpful about that?
I think, you asked the question of confidence. I'm still grappling with being seen. Strangely, like I work in a profession where the
look at me, but only when I tell you.
Exactly. It kind of, like I was comfortable with the idea of being seen on stage, being seen on camera, being seen on carpet. It was and still am extremely uncomfortable with being seen in any other space. Like any other space outside of, like, I want the work to be seen, not me to be seen. And I am paying a lot of money to figure out what that's about.
What generally speaking, what is it about?
Sure. I'm sure it ties back. I'm talking in my book, The Road is Good, about there are parts where I'm talking about, like we had a lot. My younger brother, sister, and I, after the path was paved, the feeling like you had to be a model minority, of never messing up, making sure you're doing.
That if you mess up, it's like, oh, look at that.
Correct. Right. And not wanting to stand out at times because that thing that makes you stand out, your race, your culture, and gender, depending on the room, are not positives in some people's eyes. And so it's better to just keep your head low and do X, Y, and Z. And my mom was constantly pushing our chin up to be like, no, 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 no. You are not meant to bury and to hide, you know? But that wrestling, that maybe it's safer. Maybe it's easier. Maybe that kid's not going to call me the N-word again if I can just get done what I need to get done here. I'm sure that is in that unpacking, you know? Thank you for this. Like we've done that good work today.
But I think but I think it's
I was
interesting.
supposed to have therapy today. I missed it.
But I think it's also true. I think especially as women, like we're often on display.
Yeah.
You know, for other people's gaze and for other people's view, and it is different. You know, and yes, it's hard for men, and we talk about that a lot as well. But for women in particular, like there's a history behind sort of what purpose we serve.
That's right.
You know, and I think especially something that's, interesting in your career, like the role that you played in Orange is the New Black didn't have to be sexy, gorgeous, ingenue. That wasn't the focus of her identity. And all those characters were so nuanced. And that's missing from a lot of the ways that women are portrayed. And so I think that's also like something really delicate, but it is about how am I seen? You know, how do people, and then also I would always think about you when I would see you on the carpet. Or when I would see you in publicity, because you're gorgeous.
Thank you.
And also like, it's almost like
So
that
are
has
you,
to, no, but it's almost like, oh, she plays this character, but then how much do we have to compete to show I'm not that person, right? I can get all verputzt is the Yiddish word. I can, and it's also like, what is the moniker in our culture, right? That you have to sort of prove, right? I can play both sides of it.
Yeah.
I can be this person and my character doesn't wear makeup, but what do I look like when I'm on the carpet? And I had this from Big Bang. Like I was this character who like barely wore makeup. Like, for most of my time, like no extensions. And like, I'd have hair.
A lot of heavy sweaters.
A lot of heavy sweaters, a lot of layers. And I would have, when a new hair person would come in and they're like, do you want to like a weave? And I'm like, no, I think they actually like me this way. Just my thin, scraggly hair, because that's a character, right? But then when you go on the carpet, you pay a lot of money to a stylist who's like, we got to show them you can really compete. And like, let's show them you got tits under there. It's like all this stuff. And it's like, it's weird, but I think that does play into a lot of this. How are we seen? It's a lot for therapists.
I think that's definitely true too. I grew in a place where, the idea, the sign of beauty was blonde hair, blue eyes. And I know I definitely internalized, and I definitely internalized the idea that then the antithesis must be ugly. And it's so funny because I've actually been like scrolling through photos that my sister, I don't know if you guys like Time Hop shop, but shout out to the app Time Hop. Let's hope it's not controversial. But it's like where they like give you memories of photos in your photo roll. And she's like sending me pictures of myself like when younger, who was a beautiful girl who I used to beat up and feel so outside. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a part of it. You make a very, very valid and fair point of like, okay, if I'm not that thing, then maybe don't look at me to tell me I'm not that thing. I already know I'm not blonde and blue-eyed. You know what I mean? Like, let's all move on, and let Ashley have her moment or whatever,
Ashley spelled EIGOUX.
So specific. Should we stop here? Discuss? No. Like that sort of thing. But what I do know and what this side of this business has done for me from a confidence perspective is it has made me believe that I am enough. That whatever idea I had out here before drumming in the brain is not true. That to change myself and my lips and my gap and the shade of my skin or my name,
your hair, I mean, anything.
I can wear a prosthetic if I want to for a part. That's fine, but I don't need to close my gap. It's beautiful. It's enough.
Your
and you
husband
can't
has one too.
Yeah.
I want to know if the baby was born with one.
She doesn't have those teeth yet. But she doesn't have those
I just had this image of like your newborn baby.
Full
like
teeth, gap. Well, that would be terrifying. But like she's coming out like
Yeah.
full 32. 32.
I've actually heard a folklore that it's good luck and it is a
baby's being born with teeth?
No.
Terrifying.
Like, what are you about to say?
No, the gap
gap.
that it is actually good luck, and I have to check my sources here, but I think it's like signifies like a specialness, a special ability.
I'll take it. Well, listen, this is where I live with that now. My mother used to tell me all the time as a kid, she's like, don't you know in Africa, because I wanted to close this gap so badly, y'all. She was like, don't you know in Africa, a gap is a sign of beauty. She was like, in my family, everyone, we call it Anyaoku, that's my mother's maiden name, gap. Everyone has it. I'm one of a few who don't. She pray for it.
Wow.
Pray for it. And she was like, don't close it. It's a sign of beauty. I was like, we don't live in Africa. We live in Medfield, Massachusetts. I'm done with this conversation. But it's like, as you get older, you realize these ideas that are told to us, they're not real. What do you know?
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm beautiful. I know my teeth are great. And here's what else. My younger sister, Chi-Chi, who has bone straight, perfect, natural teeth, because she would hear my mother say that all the time.
She wanted it.
She wanted a gap. So it's like beauty is relative. It's perspective. It's what you really feel about yourself at the end of the day. I feel beautiful. My husband thinks I'm gorgeous. I know I am. That's all I need to know.
I'm curious about your experience of intuition.
Intuition.
Do you feel, there's a kind of, I'm going somewhere here. Do you feel like you have strong intuition? Like you feel guided, towards any particular direction?
I think I have a good gut. I don't know if I necessarily say guided, but what I do know is almost every time I have not followed my intuition or my gut, it has never worked out. Like when I have just...
Wait, hold on. It's two negatives. Say it again.
It has, I have not followed.
Okay. When you've had an intuition, but you didn't follow it.
And I didn't follow it, those things did not go well. They did not, it is double negative, but it does.
No, but it's like...
They did not go well. Like,
right.
I do know that it's like, even if it doesn't seem to make sense to anybody else but me, do that thing. And then it's always kind of like, been like, oh, well, that did actually go the right way.
I've had that experience. And in the negative, I've had the experience where my gut is like, don't do this thing. It doesn't feel right. It's not going to work. And the logical brain is like, well, but all this seems reasonable and that seems reasonable.
Here we are 5 years later.
Because there are factors that are obviously or often unseen.
Not the double negative.
That we can't figure out. I'm curious how you reconciled your quitting moment in light of the success that came, literally that afternoon. Do you think those messages were frustration?
You've tried this 100 times. How many ways do you need to be told this isn't working for you? Go back to law school.
Or like the anticipatory nature of like, as we get so close to our goal, sometimes that part of us that may have been being dragged along by faith that maybe kind of wasn't so sure, kind of rears its head one more time. Like, how do you reconcile like what you were being told by what you it sounded like was intuition, but clearly may have not been sort of the highest intuition?
Okay, so since we've talked about faith a lot, and I am a believer in a higher source, I will more properly contextualize that moment. Can I go there?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so...
We already went there in our heads. We're just waiting for you to come along.
Okay. I believe that moment was really for me to know that God is real. And that it will all be okay. Follow me here, because it's going to take us a journey.
The road is good.
The road is good. I prayed that surrender prayer. I had prayed it days earlier with one of my dear friends, Celise, who had sent it to me to pray. And I had been like, yes, I surrender to getting blue bloods, like this is, but I didn't really surrender. That day on the train, I surrendered. I came home I talk about this in the book. I said, I came home. Look at me. I'm like, I talk about this in the book. I came home. I loved this show called Oprah's Masterclass. I don't know if you guys have ever watched, right? And Lorne Michaels is on. I had this episode saved forever.
That's SNL's executive producer.
Yep. And I hadn't watched it for so long. Like I kept skipping it. No shade, Lorne Michaels. But like I was just kept skipping it, moving to. For some reason I get home. I was like, let me watch that Lorne Michaels one. And he's talking about starting SNL. And he's saying something about like some bees sketch that, I don't know, kept like not doing well. Yeah.
If you were a gay bee, would you be attracted to me? I know exactly the sketch.
Some bee sketch. I don't know. And it had like flopped. That's amazing. You know that.
Yeah.
Really? Pulled that one out.
Some bee sketch. And like how the show was flopping. And like, he was like, he says on the TV, he said, I decided to give it one more go. And this is what I see on TV, he says. And I thought that if I could just keep the faith, and the screen dissolved, they're in those confessionals, the image dissolved, the words, keep the faith, scrolled across the bottom of the screen. It turns into like what looks like, the only way I can describe it is like a Country Time lemonade commercial. Sky has all these like purples and reds and oranges, whatever. It's big tree. There's a window on a house to the left. It almost feels like it smells like food. Something's baking. Keep the faith runs across the screen. I said, oh, I like that. When this is over, I'm going to rewind back to this part, pause it, take a picture, and tweet it. This is why I know exactly what time it was. 5:43. And the phone rang, and I got the call. I went back like a week later because I got all excited. My sushi wine party quitting party turns into like a celebration party. My sister and I were like eating the sushi, we're crushing wine, like living our life. A week later, I'm like, oh, I never took a picture of that keep the faith thing. Like, I'm going to take a picture now. I go back, not there.
Stop.
True story.
Stop.
Not there.
It's spooky.
Not there. And I was like, I know what I saw. You cannot tell me.
You were not on the drugs.
I was not on the drugs. I hadn't even started the wine yet. It's like, I know what I saw. And it made me say, I knew God was real, but now I know God is real. And why is that significant? Because in the hardest moment in my life that I didn't know was going to come 8 years later when I'm sitting in a hospital listening to a cancer diagnosis that's telling me ultimately where this road is leading. I know now that God is real. And like in that moment, like I said, I knew God was real. And I knew everything was going to be okay. I knew, as hard as it was to know this, that everything supremely is going to be okay. Even if I could never have imagined this. I needed that. I needed to know something to cling to for me.
And there's two components of that makes me think of. The first is that obviously God or a power greater than yourself is important to rely on when you are in the narrows, as we say, when things are difficult. But you won't have a conversation. There's no one to have a conversation with if you haven't practiced in times when it wasn't like that.
Yes.
Right? So they say that practicing a conversation or a relationship with something greater than yourself when you're not in a dire situation is building the relationship so that if you get to a point where you are struggling, you already know how to reach out.
That's it.
You know where to turn, right? If it's the first time you're trying, you're going to be like, what, where? This is not a thing.
Yes.
But if it's like, oh, I talk to this being, I understand this power, right?
Yep.
I can turn to that. And the other thing I thought of is, I want you to clarify, and I know just from, in particular, also your mother's wisdom and sort of what, you've woven into your life. The notion is not that God is waiting to give everyone their fairy godmother wish.
No.
The notion is not like, you got the job, thanks God.
Yeah.
It's not, I call that like the gumball machine, religion, which if I put this in, I get what I want. I get the parking spot I want, which is great. If you pray for a parking spot and you get it, I'm happy for you. But what you're saying is there's a larger understanding of comfort
Yes.
faith,
Yes.
goodness,
Yes.
and okayness. So that even if your mother gets pancreatic cancer, right?
Yes.
And also that her faith sustained her
Correct.
through that. Like that's the ultimate larger lesson. That okay is something that in God's language, we can't even understand.
Correct. I mean, I remember before they came in to give that diagnosis, a chaplain came in and said, somebody asked for prayer, and we're like, nobody did. But they're like, would you like it? And we're like, okay. And she looks at my mom and says,
A
what
lady
would
chaplain?
Yes. And she said, what would you like me to pray for? And she said, that God's will be done.
Not mine.
And we were like, no, for no cancer. Like time out. She doesn't know what she's saying. Like, that's not for God's will. Like, that's like, but that peace beyond all understanding, you can have that in that moment. And you have something, to your point, to reach for in your back pocket when that moment comes, which I'm so thankful she had. I'm thankful I had. And can return to it. Me and God were fighting for a little bit there when this all went down, because I couldn't believe. I didn't know that I thought my mom was a god, small g. I didn't know that she could leave this earth. I really, really genuinely did not know. And was like blown away by the prospect of it.
Of mortality.
Yeah. And I couldn't believe that my God would take the most personal and important person away from me in this life. All of my greatest moments in my life, full stop, to that point had involved her. Our life together, not my life, not my life in this work, our life together. So we were boxing for a while there, God and I. We found our way back, the birth of my daughter, my marriage, and then the birth of my daughter. It was like joy, something that I didn't even know that I had in spades.
What's that word? I don't know that word.
Joy.
Yes.
Joy, like a fountain that I hadn't known that I'd had in spades before. I felt left my being. And now I feel it like coming back and so alive, rip-roaring alive. Again, because it is all okay. Like, here she is, Aduba, my daughter, daughter of the kingdom, which makes her the daughter of the people. Here she is, this amazing you all. You have life in this world. It's like there is more to the story than what I thought was the end of the story, frankly.
Is your husband a man of faith?
He is.
Is he also Nigerian?
He is not.
Okay.
He's not. He's half Black American, half Bahamian.
We're so appreciative for you sharing, so much about your acting life and your history, but also sharing this beautiful book. This is an advanced copy, so don't be jealous that I have this cover. The book is The Road is Good, How a Mother's Strength Became a Daughter's Purpose. And really, you're a real real testament to what you were raised in. It's really beautiful. And I kind of wish I could know all your siblings too, because I know
awesome.
that you're amazing and, and you have a notoriety that obviously now carries your name in, other realms all over the world. But I also know with the way that your mother raised you, that is resonant no matter what any of you don't do. It's really, really special, and so grateful that you're sharing it with so many people and also with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Truly awesome.
Yeah, really.
You're also very normal.
I hope so.
So
I'm
are
sure,
you? I'm sure you have your moments, we all do. But I don't know. I'm so used to meeting people who've been raised in the industry, and they have everything's very guarded and special, and it's so amazing. And it's just really nice, just talk like a person.
Yeah, we're just all people out here in this world trying to do the gig, you know what I mean, of life.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
When she was talking about the Lorne Michaels interview moment, what I thought was, it sounds like she's on drugs.
Yeah. She had a transcendental experience.
My question is, if I was sitting next to her, would I have been watching the same thing on TV, or was it literally her imagination that experienced that? Like, was there any objective?
I don't think there was anything objective. I think that she had a kind of out of body,
visualization.
I mean, if she would have shown up at a hospital, they probably would have been like, "You're schizophrenic. We're putting you on medicine," right? Like, I don't know. It was very specific. Like, the detail with which she remembered it is really fascinating. But it sounded like she was on drugs or having a transcendental experience. And, I love that notion of like, what does it mean to keep the faith,
I feel like we need to take a break from this podcast, research Country Time lemonade commercials, see if any Country Time lemonade commercials could have possibly existed in that era that had that message.
I don't think so. You mean like,
could there have been a corruption?
Could she have been pulling something up in her mind that she had actually seen? Nope, I don't think so. I just looked up Country Time lemonade, keep the faith. Nothing comes up.
That's on an exhaustive search. I'm just wondering, like, could she have scrolled back to the point in the episode that she thought that the commercial was and she had DVR'd it? And maybe there's dynamic ad programming in the DVR so that they replaced the ads when she actually went back because they saw it. Maybe not. I don't know that technology exists at that time. Like, I'm not doubting that she had that experience. I'm just wondering the mechanisms by which that experience happened.
You know what I liked? I liked that it felt like we were learning something that she doesn't normally share with a lot of people. But
it made you feel special.
It made me feel special, but it also made me feel like she felt safe to reveal like kind of a special aspect of this story, which like a lot of the story is like, I quit acting and I was gonna like tell my whole family, but then I got the job. Like, that's amazing enough. Like, just that kind of, synchronicity. But the fact that there was like this whole other moment.
She wasn't going to tell us that. We got to the end of the interview.
We got it out of her. Fetched it out of her.
How many times do you think she said, yes, I quit acting just this one time?
We might be the only people who know that story. And now all of you listening.
Maybe I get a little kudos for getting us there.
Kudos for getting us there, Jonathan.
There you go.
And kudos to all of you for listening. And make sure you subscribe. It's really important to us that we know that you're out there. We know you're listening. We know you're watching, but please subscribe on our YouTube channel. Hit the little bell icon so you can know when new episodes drop. And also make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts, like Spotify or really anywhere.
If you have had a transcendental experience without drugs where God has given you a message, let us know about it.
Especially if it's of the Country Time lemonade variety.
Maybe you've seen that commercial. Also share the link.
From our breakdown to the one we hope you never have. We'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, one and now she's gonna break